Hey guys, welcome back to the Safe Zone podcast, the space where we talk about faith, mental health, and real life breakthroughs. I'm your host, Living, and today we'll be diving into a much needed conversation about detoxing, isolating, and recharging with God. You see, sometimes we get so caught up in the noise of life that we forget to just be still, reset, and just to allow God to pour back into us. So today we're going to break down why spiritual detoxing is necessary, how isolation can be a tool for growth, and what it really means to get refreshed and recharged in His presence. The need for a spiritual detox. First, you want to recognize the fact that you have clutter. Sometimes we won't even realize how much mental and spiritual junk we're carrying. For example, negative thoughts, unhealthy attachments, social media overload, maybe just relationships that drain us. There's all types of reasons for a spiritual detox if you have clutter in your life, spiritually and mentally. Signs that you need a detox, they include feeling spiritually drained, distant from God, overwhelmed by life, or if you're constantly seeking validation from people instead of God. If you recognize any of those symptoms, those are clear signs that you need a detox. There's also a need for a scriptural foundation. I like to go to Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And what that means is that even though you are in the world, you don't have to be like everybody else of the world, if that makes sense. So you want to be a leader and not a follower. You can take some actions by starting to identify what's pulling you away from God. You know, if it's distractions, if it's unhealthy habits, toxic energy, just anything. You want to write it down. You want to pray on it. And you want to make a commitment to detox from it. All right? Isolation does not mean punishment. And I think a lot of us get to that point where we feel like when we're asked by God to isolate, that is punishment. And it's not. It's just really preparation. You see, God uses isolation for elevation. For example, throughout the Bible, right? We see that before God elevates somebody, He often isolates them. For example, Moses, Elijah, Jesus. They all had moments where they had to step away from a certain situation to hear from God clearly. See, when you start shifting the perspective, instead of seeing isolation as loneliness, you start to see it as a sacred season where God is removing the noise so He can speak to you directly. In Mark 1, verse 35, it says, very early in the morning, while it is still dark, Jesus got up. He left the house and He went off to a solitary place where He prayed. So He was up early, making sure He had that time to Himself where He would go off in solitary and get connected to God. You want to start giving yourself permission, guys, to pull back, even if that might mean stepping away from social media. You might start to limit certain conversations you're going to have with people. You may even start to take solo retreats or just simple vacations. But you want to create a space where you can hear God without distractions. When I was detoxing and I was isolating and I was elevating, I always, if I had the choice, I always wanted to go back to a farm setting where I can just completely isolate myself. Because I just felt like I needed to be in nature, if that makes sense. So you actually want to give yourself permission to pull back, right? Again, if you have to take a trip, that's fine. If you have to detox from social media, do it. If you have to stop speaking to certain people, hey, do what you have to do. But create that safe space, okay? Create that safe zone. Also, you want to recharge with God for your next level. Now, what that means is you want to be spiritually recharged so that when you detox and isolate, you're going to create room for God to pour into you. You're no longer confined to just moving on empty, but you'll be operating from a place of overflow. And that requires you to fast, intermittent fasting. That breaks spiritual strongholds. It may require you to have daily prayer and worship moments with the Most High so you can get His word into you. You also want to start to practice ways on how to recharge your body, your mind, things of that sort. Journaling is also a good way to recharge because you'll be having conversations with God, right? Kind of telling Him, some areas in your life where you may have problems. You're just really voicing if you have concerns, doubts, or worries. That's when you give it up to Him. You have that you and Him time where you guys can just sit and talk and analyze and go over things, okay? Because He won't know unless you bring it to His attention. He's watching. Of course, He can see, but He will not know it's a problem to you or a worry for you unless you speak it, right? So you want to make sure that you are being completely honest, upfront, and, open about anything, because then you'll be releasing that from yourself, okay? You want to also surround yourself with spiritually uplifting content. I remember when I detoxed, I only wanted to see powerful, inspirational messages on my timeline. If there was anything negative, I made sure to take it off because I'm a social media content creator. I have a podcast, and so I do visit social media quite often. And I did tell myself, if I'm going to be on here, I want to see inspirational content. Okay. There's a scripture for recharging. Okay. And it's, by Isaiah, chapter 40, verse 31. And it talks about those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Okay? So, when you recharge with God and you elevate, He's going to help renew your strength, right? Because you're going to start pouring into yourself. You're going to start developing self-love. You're going to start to understanding what it is that you like and don't like, because you're going to have a clear, direct line of communication with Him, because you're not going to have all that noise around you, if that makes sense. If you have kids, I completely understand. Detoxing may not be as easy as it sounds, but you have to set aside the time to still do it. And you still have to at least try, right? So that God can actually move some things around in your life to make it more accommodating for you. I remember a time when I used to think isolating and detoxing was impossible. I'm a mommy of 3, and so I was like, it's completely impossible. However, I seen God move, and fortunately through my divorce, it's set up to where their father and I, we do week on, week off type of things. And the weeks that I don't have my children, those are the weeks where I've dedicated some of those days to detoxing, or just pouring into myself and getting some mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual rest. Because raising kids, I have 2 boys and a daughter. It requires a lot of patience and understanding. Okay, so there's times when mommy just has to really pull it back, right? and allow God to pour back into me. Okay. As a mom, we give, and we do. So we need those moments, ladies, where we can recharge and recenter, and detox and isolate and ultimately elevate, because we're being refreshed with the Spirit of God. Okay. So don't forget, that was Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31. Okay. The action step of this plan will be to recharge, and commit to spending focused, uninterrupted time with God, even if it's just for 10 minutes. Okay, so that's the action step to that detox plan. If you feel like you've been drained lately, or just disconnected, or even feeling like you're running on empty, like your emotions are high, you just can't think straight, everything is irking you, you probably need a detox. You know what I mean? So step back, quiet down, and then let God fill you back up. Elevation requires preparation, all right? And preparation starts with making room for God. So don't be afraid. Don't be hesitant. Don't feel like it's dumb. Don't be embarrassed. Any of that, right? Because God knew you before you were in your mother's womb. So these are things that He's familiar with. He's made it to whereas we should set aside time to be quiet and connect with Him. Okay? So, guys, if you can let me know in the comment section, or just on any one of the social media platforms, one thing you need to detox from this season, send us a message, comment, and share your thoughts. Don't forget to hit that subscription button and turn that bell on for notifications. And just remember that if this episode spoke to you, please be sure to share it with somebody who needs it. You never know who also may need a detox, so that they can isolate and elevate and become refreshed and renewed with the Spirit of God, okay? And so if it again spoke to you, don't hesitate to share it with somebody who also needs it. Until next time, stay safe, stay grounded, and stay in the safe zone, okay? Thank you guys so much. I'm your host, Living. I hope this helps.